Good morning, good afternoon, good night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Spiritist Talk series that is promoted weekly by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Today, I'm really happy to be here and host a very special talk. This is the what I call a special edition called Self-Assessment and Resolution. Yes, self-assessment and resolutions. As we approach the new year of 2023, we have a wonderful, wonderful panel with guests to be here. They will be here to discuss six different qualities or six different aspects of our personal spiritual growth. So I would like for you to be here to listen to all of them. And yes, there is an opportunity to have your questions or your comments answered or addressed during the presentation at the very end. So please use the chat window and put your thoughts, your ideas, your comments, etc. We will have about 20 minutes to address your comments. And I would like at this point to introduce the speakers panel. And we start with Alba Nydia Morales. Alba has a bachelor's degree in psychology and pedagogy and a master's degree in education. She has been working in education for more than 30 years, and currently she works as a school, community, and family specialist for a school district in Maryland. Ms. Morales is an active member of the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, or SSB, and she's been working with them since 2006. She is coordinating the Children and Youth Spiritist Education Program since 2008. Thank you, Alba, for being here. Next, I would like to introduce Andrea Marshall Netto. I'm sorry. Hi, Andrea. Andrea is the director at Conscious Living Spiritist Group. She is secretary of the board of the Spiritist Federation of Florida. She is also a managing director of Leal Publisher, that is the affiliated branch of Leal Livraria in Brazil, in the translation and dissemination of Divaldo Franco's Spiritist books. She's also a FEB publisher. She's working for both Leal Publisher and FEB Publisher, which is also an affiliated branch of the Brazilian Spiritist Federation's publisher, with the goal of also disseminating the Spiritist titles in English. I would like to introduce Claudio Filho, who is dad of one. He is a technology enthusiast. He's been studying Spiritism since 2010 and is a member of the California Spiritist Association and Nosso Lar Spiritist Society. Let's bring Ligia Carvalho, who is the secretary and the coordinator of the Spiritist Education Department and the bookstore for the Spiritist Center Divine Light in Newark, New Jersey, which she co-founded and currently coordinates with a group of friends. Ligia is an active participant in the USA Spiritist movement as a speaker. She's also a member of the United States Spiritist Federation, and she serves as their Family, Youth, and Children's Spiritist Education Director, FIXI. Professionally, Ligia is a licensed therapist with more than 15 years experience working with children and adolescents with behavioral and mental health problems, and she also works as a grief and bereavement therapist. Let's bring Peter. Peter Hayes is a worker at Spiritist Group Love and Light in Newark, New Jersey. He's also the current outreach director of the United States Spiritist Federation and an active participant in the Tri-State Spiritist Federation. Peter has published several children's books, love them by the way, with his wife, Betty Rosen, through their company Sem Fronteiras Press, and also with other publishers in Brazil, Colombia, and the US. He has a very long background, extensive background in theater, and he holds an MFA in dramatic writing from New York University. Currently, he works in commercial real estate. Finally, let's bring Sonia Doi. Dr. Doi is currently occupying the positions, plural, of president of the Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Maryland, the U.S. Spiritist Medical Association, and the International Spiritist Medical Association. She graduated medicine by the University of São Paulo, Brazil, and has a specialization in endocrinology. I want to thank you, my dear friends, my esteemed panel members, and the organizations they represent. I would like to go ahead and uh, thank everybody who's here today watching this live broadcast and want to give together with them a very, very warm welcome to all. It is so good to have you here discussing self-assessment and resolutions. And I am sure you're as eager as I am to hear from them. So let's go ahead and get started. I am going to ask Alba Morales, representing the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, to start our panel discussion today with her topic, patience.
Thank you everyone. If you see a little tiny face there, it's my grandchild. This is life. So, okay. Thank you, dear. I'm going to share my screen. Hold on a second. Give me a second. Everything, we practice everything, but now a little one is here. Okay. Okay. And here we go. Patience. So let me practice patience for a minute. Okay, he's gone. Imagine someone gives you the seed of a tree. Imagine that you plant this seed and you're watering the seed every single day. You put all your love, all your effort, all your care just to see that seed blossom. A year passes and nothing is coming out from the ground. You're wondering, maybe it needs more care. So you continue doing the same, watering the seed for a second year. Nothing is growing. For a third year, nothing is growing. Hold on a second. Baby, I can't help you. And for the third year, and nothing is coming out from the ground. By the fourth year, you are questioning yourself, what is going on? However, although you're still tired, you continue giving care to the seed, watering the seed, and with the hope that one day it will grow. 4 years pass, and you start thinking that all your efforts are not making any sense. By the 5th year, in 6 weeks, a beautiful bamboo tree blossoms, and it grows 8 foot tall. And you are amazed. In China, there is this type of bamboo that you need to water for 5 consecutive years, every single day, until it blossoms. In the 5th year, in 6 weeks, it grows immensely. And this is a story by Rahanath Swami, which is a Hinduist monk. That's how we start taking this subject of patience today. What it is patience? What is it? So we went to the dictionary, And it's coming from the word patientia, that means to suffer or endure. And in the same Oxford Dictionary, they say that is the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. Paciencia, suffer and endure, and the capacity to accept whatever it comes to our lives. 1 year of watering the seed, 2 years of watering the seed, without getting angry, upset, or without losing hope. Patience is helping us in our day-to-day lives to obtain things that we set for ourselves, like to get into the goals that we set for ourselves. However, and currently in nowadays, right, there is something, a great force that is opposite to patience. And we see this in all of us, especially in the new generations, in the old spirits that are reincarnating as a little kids or children, and it is instant gratification. We want that food now, and we have an app and we get it. Or we want this other gadget. Or we want, and everything is in our fingertips, and we get it. We get it. Instant gratification. According with the same dictionary, instant gratification is a term that refers to the temptation and resulting tendency to forego a future benefit in order to obtain a less rewarding but more immediate benefit. So basically, when we don't exercise patience, we are doing an interchange and we are getting something of less value instead of waiting for the result or for something that is going to bring more fulfillment to our life. That's basically it. So why in the New Year's resolutions, when we start meditating about this, why patience is important in building these goals, as we mentioned before. The same monk, Radhanath Swami, said that we need to define our goals and values and then pursue them with enthusiasm and patience. So what is the invitation for today? Today we are inviting you, all of us, to certainly reflect about 2022. What did I accomplish? What I didn't know? Or what I still in my bucket list? Just reflecting about it and setting new goals. We need, obviously, in this planetary level, these pauses of reflection and pauses in the time. We need time and space for us to really grab the meaning of life. So now that the end of the year is approaching, let us reflect in those goals. And then we need two elements to pursue our goals. And they could be short term or long term. By either of them, we need patience. 1, 2, 4, 5 years of watering the seed, of watering the goal that we have with all our love, with all our desire, and with enthusiasm. So that's why patience is so important, because when we persist, we make this silence bows here, we will get there. As the opposite, when we want the instant gratification, when we want the instant reward, when we want just to see things right here and right now and at this moment and at this point, we are getting something little and interchanging for a beautiful, greater benefit. What is the beautiful, greater benefit? It depends of our goals. But since we are talking through a spiritist channel, it has to be with the reward for the spirit. What do we want in our future? Do I want to return to planet Earth and repeat the same lessons? Do I want to return to planet Earth and to have a better world and to grow from this person that I am now to grow in a better person in the future? We are talking here about goals that are also are going to be directed towards the transcendence spirit. It's not only goals for 2023, and it's not only patience and hard work and enthusiasm for this year that is ahead of this lifetime, but also as spirits. Our destiny is to be truly happy. How can we get that happiness? We need to start exercising now. And another phase of patience, we find it in the Gospel according to Spiritism in chapter 9, in which the spirits say patience is to a form of charity. Charity towards ourselves and charity towards others. And they say the charity that consists in giving alms to the poor is the easiest of all charities. There is another kind, forgiving those whom God placed on our path to be instruments of our suffering and to put our patience to test. And here we say, the bar is too high. The bar is too high. Because patience is not only to get us, to help us to get the goals, the projects that we have, right? Patient with ourselves when we get ill, when we know the theory but not the practice. It happens a lot for us spiritists that, I shouldn't be angry in this moment, but I shouldn't say this or that. I know better. Patient. We are learning. We are a work in progress. Patient with ourselves, but especially exercising charity and patience to the ones that are around us, the ones that God placed in our path as an instruments of suffering. Instruments of suffering. And we know that suffering and pain and the obstacles and the tests that we have in life, they are a necessity. We need them to learn. Sometimes we request them before we were born, when we were planning our reincarnation, when we were doing our reincarnatory plan. And most important of all, if we want to be a truly happy, joyful spirit, we need to acquire so many virtues that we're going to see some of them here in this presentation today. Patience is one of them. So we're thinking, how can I acquire patience? I have a short temper. I really don't tolerate this and that. Oh, okay, God, the universe, the immense love of the universe is saying, my dear, my son, my child, my daughter, here I'm going to place you with these family members. Oh, here I'm going to place you with these classmates, or with this working group. I'm going to place you in this community. And not everybody over there is a test for our patient, obviously. It will be very unfair. But the ones that are closest to us, are the more challenging ones, right? Like we truly need to embrace charity and to think what I would like for others to do if I were in that position. The golden rule: do unto others what you want others to do unto you. And then is when we start exercising patience. 1 year, 3 years, 6 years, 600 years, eternity. So that's why patience is so important in our New Year resolutions and in general in our life. It helps us to acquire our goals. We need persistence and enthusiasm to go along with patience, but also it helps us to understand ourselves better, to take care of ourselves better, but most of all, to tolerate, to forgive those around us. We would like to see what Joanna de Angelis, in her book Happy Life, in chapter 4, she says about patience. Patience is a virtue that will help you acquire physical, spiritual, and social assets. We see it when we set our goals. It teaches us how to wait when we cannot have what we want right away. Teaches how to wait, because we will get it eventually at some point. Never become impatient. Patience will help you overcome everything. And this is when what we see in the spiritual leaders, whatever is our spiritual leaders, in a temple, in a mosque, in a church, in the Spiritist movement, Hinduism, we see them that all of them, they exercise patience. They're very serene, very composed,
That is
because they don't.
awesome. Yeah, that's so awesome, Alba. Let's go ahead
Thank you.
and yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for being here and talking to us. I just love what you talk to us about it, and the fact that this is truly a reminder for all of us, right? How to be patient with ourselves, how to be patient with all of those who are on our path, right? Alba said they're instruments of our suffering, but they're mostly instruments of our growth. So thank you, Alba. And I would like now to ask Peter Hayes. And Peter, hi, Peter. Peter will be discussing
Hi.
humility. Woo, that's a tough one, Peter. Uh, Peter's talking to us from New Jersey, and he'll be representing the Tri-State Spiritist Federation. Peter, go ahead, take it away.
Okay. So it is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. What is humility and what problems might we have when we lack humility? It's a good idea to put those two questions together because one of the ways in which humility is defined is what it's not. For instance, humility is not proud or haughty. Humility is not arrogant or assertive. And since the opposite of humility is not being proud, for instance, it's a good idea to distinguish between healthy pride and unhealthy pride. Healthy pride is rooted in self esteem and confidence, and it's essential. It's part of normal emotional development. In fact, you could say that that when we have healthy pride, it is very much connected to humility, and that we should be able to, with people who have healthy pride, tend to be people who are more calm, serene, and they're not afraid of the truth. They're not afraid of criticism, and they know who they are. In other words, people with healthy pride are grounded. But unhealthy pride is often linked to arrogance, And a lot of times people who have unhealthy pride don't necessarily know who they really are at their core, and they're not grounded. Often arrogance is overcompensating for security, or it expresses shame in some way. An unhealthy pride, aggressive behavior are connected to grandiosity, which is a recognized mental disorder that is connected to narcissism. People who are arrogant and narcissistic feel compelled to inflate their image to the world at large. They tend to resent criticism. They tend to be aggressive, and they manipulate other people when doing so suits their purposes. Often their interest in someone is directly proportional to what they can get out of that person. And when arrogant, narcissistic people are disappointed, well, they can easily feel angry and even depressed. All these attributes, the opposite of humility, create unhappiness and emotional emptiness. And naturally, another part of all this is selfishness. So what do we mean by selfishness? Well, selfishness can be something like this: I am the center of the universe. My needs are more important than everyone else's. This is a normal attitude for babies and small children. Being egocentric is a baby or a small child's rite of passage. It's a normal, healthy part of growing from infancy into early childhood. That is, until we begin to learn and understand that we uh, have to learn how to share, and that we begin to understand that there are others who also have needs and not just us. This is one reason why play is important for small children, because they begin to understand this very important virtue. So we human beings grow out of this egocentric phase if we experience normal, healthy development. However, it is a sign of emotional immaturity when we do not, unless there's something that's really preventing normal, healthy development. And it seems that, and yet, despite that, it seems that many take delight in being proud, entitled, and selfish. But these behaviors create instability for humanity as a whole. And that is why humility really matters. Why does selfishness and entitlement persist? Well, there are lots of reasons why that can occur. But a lot of it has to do with the distortion in our perceptions about the root cause of our problems. There was a recent article in Psychology Today that points out that a lot of times we tend to blame, or people who suffer with this will blame their problems on external factors like the government, corporations, other people, and so forth. But there are times that feeling can be justified. That's true. There may be times when those situations occur. But if we position ourselves primarily as victims, it can become a cop-out. If we cling to feeling that external feelings are always affecting us in some way, then it kind of implies that we are helpless. It implies that we do not have to take responsibility. But this attitude, understandable as it can be, is nevertheless a distortion. Even though we Spiritists often emphasize that we are not victims, the desire to do so or act as if we are victims can be a sign of depression, and it can be also connected to feelings that we are no longer in control. And yet, a desire to be in control all the time or control everyone and everything around us is also another sign of emotional immaturity. Most of us understand this need to be in control is not realistic, and it's irrational, and yet sometimes we want to do this anyway. But why does humility matter, and what are some of Spiritism's perspectives on it? Well, Spiritism emphasizes that we human beings are social animals, and therefore we need one another in order to grow together as a community. Unhealthy pride and selfishness prevent this from happening. That is why, for instance, question 759 in the Spirit's book emphasizes that pride and vanity are two plagues of humanity. And question 785 points out that pride and selfishness are the greatest obstacles to progress. This is all part of part 3 of the Spirit's book, by the way, that talks about the divine laws that come from God. And it's interesting that this idea gets elaborated on in question 793, when it says a fully developed civilization is where we have the least amount of selfishness, greed, and pride. And another telling point that is made is question 806, which emphasizes that social and financial inequality is not a law of nature, that inequalities will vanish with the disappearance of pride and selfishness. And maybe this is why those points made maybe this is why in the beginning of the Spirit's book, in the introduction, it says, good spirits only provide assistance to those who serve God with humility and impartiality. So our intentions are essential in this. Now, Spiritism is rooted in the teachings of Jesus, and since that is the case, the Gospel according to Spiritism also has some comments about humility. But I'll mention first that in question 658 from the Spirit's book, God, when it talks about prayer, God will ignore the prayer of a vain, proud, or selfish person unless it is offered as an act of sincere repentance and humility. So in the Gospel according to Spiritism, it mentions blessed in chapter 7 is blessed are the poor in spirit. But to be poor in spirit does not mean that we're dumb or simple-minded in some way, but rather that to be poor in spirit means to be humble and that we free ourselves of unhealthy pride. And when we're able to do this, then the kingdom of God belongs to those who are humble. And this helps to free us up. And it's also connected to charity, that is, humility is. Without humility, charity is impossible. And this leads to the important maxim from Spiritism, without charity, there can be no salvation. Also, chapter 7 from the Gospel according to Spiritism emphasizes that pride is a terrible adversary to humility. So why is pride a terrible adversary to humility? Well, one reason would be that because humility is wrongly perceived as being weak, therefore humility is frequently under attack. In the brand new book from Joanna de Angelis in English, it's an old book, but it's called Sowing of Love. There's a nice chapter, chapter 50, on the subject of humility. And she emphasizes that modern life with its false notions conspires against its vitality, claiming it to be cowardice and weakness. But she points out this is not correct. She says that humility is the opposite of weakness and, quote, cannot be confused with shyness or fear. And there's some nice attributes that are emphasized in humility, but it's also important to say that since the law of progress says that pride and selfishness are big obstacles to spiritual progress, then humility, which is the opposite, is essential to humanity's progress. By eliminating selfishness and pride as much as we can, we're taking direct responsibility for ensuring peace and prosperity for all, not just a few. And that's what creates stability. And the great thing is that each of us can do this. There's really nothing realistic to stop us, even though it's something that we struggle with at times. And some attributes of humility, also from the Sowing of Love, is I like this one. The more humility conceals itself, the more beautiful it gets. And here's a nice one. Humility helps without being smug about it, like a precious brook that does not know the benefit it spreads. So if we imagine ourselves being like a river of water, we're connected to the earth, we're flowing, we're providing nourishment, and yet we don't even notice that we're doing it. And I just want to wrap up by sharing with you a chapter from our Daily Bread, chapter 66, which I'm very fond of. It's called Goodwill, and it opens with a quote from Paul's letter to the Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 15. He says, "See to it that you live prudently." Well, what does that mean? Emmanuel emphasizes that goodwill finds work to be done. Work leads to renewal. Renewal finds the good. The good expresses the spirit of service. The spirit of service brings understanding. Understanding brings humility. Humility wins love. Love leads to self denial. Self denial reaches the light. The light promotes self betterment. Self betterment sanctifies the individual. The sanctified individual converts the world to God. Proceeding prudently through simple goodwill, the individual reaches the divine kingdom of the light. So, if we think about resolution for the next year, maybe we could ask ourselves the following question: can I find ways to help without calling attention to myself? If we can do that, then we're truly, it's one way certainly to practice humility. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Peter. This is awesome, isn't it? I love that you shared quotes from A Sowing of Love by Joanna de Angelis, Our Daily Bread by Emmanuel, in addition to your talk with the Spirit's book and the Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec. So, everyone, we have lots and lots to ponder on the subject of humility. But shall I continue with now Claudio Filio, who will be discussing altruism. Thank you so much, Claudio, for being here and for representing the California Spiritist Association.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marcia. So, altruism is the perfect continuation from what we learned so far on patience and also humility. A lot of people define altruism as the opposite of egoism. It's definitely something to consider, right? But it's so much more than that. It's really compassion, it's being selfless, it's the desire to help other people without getting anything back. And we live in a time that, although Spiritism tells us that we're moving toward a better world with more evolved people, it's hard sometimes to believe on that. We are exposed to so many news on negativity or tragedies that are occurring elsewhere in the world. We have a war going on right now. So sometimes it's really all this negativity impacts us, and it makes us question if that's really happening. And I want to tell you guys a story that happened in my very little town here. I'm in the Bay Area, in a place called Pleasanton. And although the Bay Area is known for the very chill weather, um, in July, this little town that I live on, Pleasanton, gets really hot. So it was July 10th of 2021, and this ultra marathon runner decided to take a run in the hills right back to me here. And like I said, it was a very, very hot day, 106 degrees that day, and he never made back home, right? Uh, so the outcome of the story wasn't great, but the commotion that happened that day was truly amazing. So unfortunately, 24 days later, they found his name was Philip Kreisig, and 24 days later, they found his body. One of the volunteers found his body under a tree. Um, so he was a dad. He had two kids, and he also left a wife. So it was a very sad story. And he didn't grow up here in Pleasanton. He was actually from Berkeley, but he grew up someplace else. And I know his parents live here in town, but he didn't grow up here. So most of the people here in Pleasanton never heard about Philip Kreisig. And one of my very good friends, Dave Grove, he took the day off work. As soon as we heard that that was happening, that they were searching for him, a lot of people start to get together and find ways to help. So Dave took the day off work and took a really, really long hike that day. I think he hiked, if I'm not mistaken, 15 miles that day. So he started early in the morning and ended at the end of the day. And as Dave, a lot of other people did the same, and they got together. They put together a little page on Facebook and also a website with instructions in how to help. Some people brought coolers. People were bringing snacks and water for the volunteers. People really, really got together. And the craziest part was most people didn't know Philip or didn't know his family. They were just there to help. They were just there for the good of their souls, and that was the most beautiful part of it. Because again, they're they're nothing in return. They were just doing for the good of their heart. And some days we had more than 200 people searching for Philip. At one point, they started using an app where you can track. So a lot of runners and people that do outdoor activities, they use this app and they started tracking every single inch of all the trails in the park. And the park is huge, right? So, and they were comparing notes. And again, it was a beautiful thing that happened. Although the outcome, they finally found his body and brought peace to the family. Um, it was a truly beautiful thing that happened where the commotion of people trying to help a stranger that nobody knew who he was. It was the beauty of the story. And every day in our lives we have the opportunity to help someone. And, and a lot of people think, oh yeah, I can donate money. Yeah, donating money is a phenomenal thing. So if you don't have the time to give, but if you can donate money, and there are several ways to do that. There are even some websites that you can go and check which places you should donate your money to, because that will have the most impact. Like the Malaria Foundation in Africa, apparently is one of the ways where you can help most people in the world if you could donate there. But besides donating money, every single one of us can help. One way, maybe whenever you go to work and you notice someone is not doing well that day, be a listener. Just sit there and ask, hey, how are you doing today? And truly listen. Most people, they don't need to hear an advice. They just need someone to be listened to. So be there for your coworkers, for your family, your friends, or even a stranger. If you go to a cafe or something, just be there for them. Uh, the other way that every one of us can help others is enabling other people to get a job. So we're living in a potential new financial crisis in the world, and we start hearing a lot about layoffs. I'm here in the Bay Area. I'm hearing all kinds of like news on layoffs and everything. Try to help someone to get a job. Sit with them, look at their resume, look at their LinkedIn page, pass the word around to your friends that maybe this person is looking for a job. That's a phenomenal way to help someone. Help kids with education. Donate your time to schools that are here in the Bay Area. We I used to help some people from Google where we would go to schools and teach kids how to write code, right? So every single one of us can help the school around your house, or maybe the school that your kids go to, by providing lunch, or by there's so many things that you can do there. Um, at work again, I had a boss that once told me that if you don't teach what you know to others, you never have the chance to grow. So teach others what you do, or if you find a way to do something better, pass that information along. That's being altruistic. And not only it's going to help you to grow, but you're also helping another human being to grow. Um, and helping your spirit center, there's always so many different activities there to be done. So don't be afraid to pull out those leaves and ask what can I help. And on the spirit center, there's so many different things that can be done, right? So it can either be just someone that goes out the door and greets the people, or picking up the trash, or help with being a speaker, or a volunteer in some of the activities that you have in there. And the last one I want to say here: be generous. We live in a society that is very greedy today. So be generous to the people that you're close to. Pay well. If you have a company or if you hire anyone, even if it's your gardener or whatever, pay them well. Because if we spread our wealth, we're also helping the world to be a better place. Um, every one of us have a lot to offer, so we need to be the light to the other people darknesses. And that's it. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Claudio. Thank you for your perspective on altruism, right? And how to show selflessness, charity, generosity. I love that. Let's spread the wealth. Let's spread and doing that by being the light. Thank you so very much. So now I would like to welcome Ligia Carvalho. And Ligia is representing the United States Spiritist Federation, and she will be talking about resilience. Ligia, please take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm being benefited here by hearing these wonderful insights. And I think the linkage that we can put with my topic being resilience is what we've noticed is by talking through patience and humility and altruism, you focus a lot of our connectedness with the outside world and how to interact. But resilience is sort of looking more into yourself. So what is resilience? So the definition for resilience is the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness. So we're talking about the ability to overcome. And I think it's needless to emphasize how tough times have been in the past, especially the last 2 to 3 years. We have experienced a change in the way that society interacts with each other. We have experienced a lot of fear. We have experienced many dangers and division, and it's been quite difficult. And part of what we have seen is also a change in mental health. So resilience is going to be the focus on how can I deal with these challenges? How can I face difficulties, whether they be socially motivated, individually motivated, or within the family. So there's a very cute, interesting story that talks about a donkey in the dry well. So this farmer, he had this old donkey and he fell in this dried well. And one day the farmer is there, he's on his land and he's hearing this donkey crying out and crying out. And he's thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? Now I have this donkey in this old deep well. Eventually, with much sadness, the farmer decided, you know what? The donkey is very old and the well needs to be covered up. I'm just going to go forward and I'm just going to do what I need to do. So he called his neighbors, his friends, the other farmers, and said, hey, can you please help me? I need to basically cover this well. And they started to throw the dirt. At first, the duck got quiet. I guess, we don't know, maybe the duck was hoping that he was being saved. But as they kept throwing the dirt onto the donkey started to cry this horrible cry. And it was just saddening. And we realized the donkey knew what was going on. They were going to bury that donkey. But soon after, things got quiet. And once again, the farmer said, what is going on? And when they looked inside, they noticed that every time they threw dirt on top of the donkey, he would shake it off. And they would throw the dirt and he would shake it off. And they would throw the dirt and he would shake it off. Eventually, to everybody's surprise, they saw the donkey climbing out of the hole and going on his way. So what happened? The donkey eventually realized, if I let the dirt fall off of me, I'll step above it and I'll just raise myself one step at a time. So what is this message? What is this, cute story bringing to us? The concept that life is going to present us with many challenges. Those are the dirt that gets thrown on us. And they feel heavy. They feel difficult. It is uncomfortable. It's scary. I mean, the donkey was crying out with fear, realizing all this thing that was going to come, all these people just basically trying to bury him alive. But eventually, he found a way. He realized if he makes the dirt into a stepping stone to rise him above, he's going to be able to overcome and get out of the hole. So he used challenges and difficulties essentially to make himself better. And that's technically the power that we humans have in order to face challenges. Life is going to present situations, but it all depends how we interpret them. You can look at a situation and think it's the worst thing in the world and then choose to be helpless, or you can say it's a challenge that I can overcome. And this ability to make this difference of perspective and reflection and choice is one that is an individual's choice. So it's a very interesting research in psychology that links and talks about this choice that we make. And this theory is called learned helplessness theory. It's a theory that addresses and studies our perspective on feeling helpless. So in summary, this theory really is focused on how clinical depression and other mental illness present itself. And it's linked to our sense of powerlessness. And the more powerless we feel, the less we are motivated to try to change things. And how was this theory come about? Obviously, with science, most of research are done with animals. So what they did was they created 3 groups of dogs. The first dog was in a harness for an amount of period of time, and then the dog was let go. The other 2 sets of dogs, they were also in harnesses, but group 2 would receive a shock, and he saw they had a lever, and every time he pressed on the lever, the shock would stop. Group 3 was also receiving those shocks and also had the lever, but the lever didn't work. What the dogs in group 3 didn't know is his ability to receive or not receive shocks was actually controlled by group 2. So they did that, and after a while, they went and tested them on a second experiment. They put the same dogs in a box with shocks, and in order to avoid the shock, all they needed to do is jump out of the box. The first set of dogs, they were put in the box, they jumped all around. They weren't getting shocks. The second group of animals, as soon as they were put in the box and they received the shocks, they immediately jump out of the box. The third group of dogs, they were put in the box, they received the shocks, and they lay there whimpering and crying, not even trying to step away. And that experiment has been repeated several times. And then what they did was they wanted to kind of rule out, is this going to be the permanent situation where these dogs are not going to try to ever overcome this? So there's many details to the experiment, but just simplifying it. After a while, they did the experiment again with the boxes. And once again, group 1, jump out of the box right away. Group 2, jump out of the box right away. But group 3, what they saw is now the time had lapsed. 1/3 of the animals, the ones that had learned before that they have no control with the lever, that they had no ability to make those shocks stopped, 1/3 of them actually this time, after some time had lapsed, they did jump out of the box, and 2/3 stayed. And that quality, when they're trying to parallel to human beings, they have termed is as optimism. And I'll link that to resilience, where they saw there was another alternative than to the permanent situation that they had been. So they have figured out that sometimes we as individuals and animals as well, when we have experienced a situation of trauma or difficulty, or what we perceive to be powerlessness, we create this generalized concept that things are the way they are and we can't change it. And we start developing this perceived notion that life has no control. I have no control over life, and therefore we don't try to change it. And therefore we cannot, be successful in utilizing our power for resilience. And it's interesting because we see that it's not true. We do have power. But the thing is, we need to understand how power works and how it's applied in our daily life. So that's where Spiritism with the Promised Consoler is such a beautiful philosophy and religion, because it helps us to understand through these concepts. And if you study chapter 19 of the Gospel According to Spiritism, it talks about faith. And that's the terminology that we can utilize to understand the concept of resilience. So what is faith? Faith is the confidence we have in the realization of something and the certainty of attaining a specific end. Through the gospel according to Spiritism, we understand that our belief that we have the ability to realize and achieve something makes it come true. And he goes a little further, he says, confidence in one's own strength gives man the capacity to carry out material things which he would not be able to do if he doubted himself. Think about challenges that you have overcome in your life. And I think that's where a lot of times, through the Spiritist philosophy, where we understand the concept of reincarnation and we understand the concept of the law of cause and effect, we know that there are things that happens in our lives to bring some teaching, to give us an opportunity exactly to do that, to show resilience and to overcome. So when you study the Spiritism philosophy, you come to understand these concepts, and that's where you see where your power to make a change lies, and that although you're facing a challenge, you are not just simply, a recipient of the situation. You are having control, and you have the ability to change that. So he goes even further in that chapter, and it says, robust faith gives perseverance, energy, and resources which allow us to overcome obstacles, be they large or small. And he also says the power of faith can be demonstrated in a direct and special manner in magnetic action. So let's think about that donkey. That donkey, he could have chosen to think, they're going to try to kill me. They're going to try to just, they're throwing dirt. And they were. But he changed the meaning of that dirt. He changed the meaning of their action. He recontextualized what that meant in his life. They were thinking, we're going to, let you go, close the hole. And he's thinking, I'm going to make it my stepping stone to save my life. So yes, things and people will present things to you. It's like when Alba talked about patience, family, friends, they come to test our ability so that we can show resilience and overcome. So we can attract this magnetic action. We can attract these resources. We can attract these opportunities by having faith in ourselves, having faith in God. And this faith can be strengthened by understanding, by studying the Spiritism doctrine. When you open up the Gospel according to Spiritism, right in the introduction, not even in the introduction, just in the opening page, it says, unshakable faith is only the kind that can face to face with reason all human epics. So faith is not blind, like some have believed in the past. Faith has to be rational. It has to be intelligent. And the Spiritist doctrine teaches us that. So I strongly recommend study the Spirit's book, study the Gospel, so many of the other books shared in the other lectures, so that we can understand where our power to make a change within ourselves and our world lies. Sincere faith is gripping and contagious. It communicates itself to those who have none or who do not even desire it. So if you feel too weak, too tired, too oppressed to find any strength within yourself, instead of isolating, instead of letting yourself cave into your anxiety and your depression and the emotional challenges and turmoils that we are all experience, reach out. Whether it's listening to lectures like this, whether it is, like Claudia said, being altruistic, doing some volunteer work, or going to a Spiritist center, or helping your neighbor, reach out, because by watching the faith of others, you will fortify your faith. But most importantly, there's this really cute story as well that it helps us to realize this need to change our concept of how we view the world. So talks, there was this elderly couple, right? And every morning they said to have breakfast, and the elderly woman would complain about the neighbor. Look at her. She doesn't know how to clean her, her clothing. She washes her sheets and she hangs them outside to dry, but they're all stained. And then the next morning, look at her again. Somebody needs to teach her how to do this. They're supposed to be white and all stained. And every morning was the same criticism. One morning, the elderly husband had woken up a little earlier. She thought that was weird, but you know what? They were sitting for breakfast, and all of a sudden she had some revelations. It's like, look, honey, somebody taught that lady how to wash her sheets. She has finally learned to clean them. They're sparkly white. They're bright out in the sun. He, in a little annoyed sense, he looks at her and he says, honey, she did not learn to wash her clothing and her sheets. This morning when I got up earlier, I washed our windows. So the perspective is that in this funny, perspective is, let's clean our way of looking at the world. Let's cleanse our perspectives, our emotions. Let's seek to be more loving for ourselves and others. And when we realize we don't have to be so defensive or so scared or so criticizing of ourselves and others, and we can be brothers and sisters, we can find the means to have a more powerful, a more life-oriented, a purposeful way of living that allows us to overcome all challenges. Thank you, and may you all have a wonderful holiday season.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Thank you. Love your stories, Lesia. And what a great discussion, right? How resilience is a testimony of how we're not powerless. And I also love your connection between resilience and faith. But we need to proceed. So let's go ahead and call Dr. Sonia Doi, who is here,
Hi.
representing the U.S. Spiritist Medical Association and the International Spiritist Medical Association. And Dr. Doi will discuss compassion. Can't wait.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity for being part of this beautiful panel. Compassion means suffering with, and it starts with empathy, which is the understanding, feeling someone else's pain or suffering. But it requires action to help alleviate suffering. For some reason, it's not advancing. Okay. Sorry, my slides are not advancing. I'm so sorry. Can somebody help me to advance my slides, João?
Hi. So you're experiencing some difficulties. I'm going to ask João, who's in the background, to see if
it worked when we tested, but now for some reason it's not going. Sorry.
Yes. So I will need for you to download to the stream or send to him directly, Sonia. In the meantime, why don't you use without? Can you do this without the slides?
Let me go. Yeah. But let me go quickly here.
Sure.
Into.
Can we do a change of order? Can we get Andrea to speak, and then we'll get back to you so you can download your slides? Would that work? So Andrea is here. So let's do this unscripted. Andrea Marshall Neto, who's here speaking from Florida. No, everyone, she's in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. So while everybody is so cold, she's there battling the warmth and the sun. It's okay, we forgive you. Andrea is representing the Spiritist Federation of Florida, and she will be discussing mindfulness. So while we do this, Andrea, thank you for speaking, and we'll talk to Dr. Doi afterwards.
Thank you. Okay, Marcia, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone, depending on where you might be watching and when you might be watching these series of short presentations on all these amazing topics related to the upcoming new year and this self-assessment that we are to do. And when we were invited to bring this topic about mindfulness, I was like, wow, I never really thought about this aspect of self-assessment. I mean, usually we are thinking about the new year. Yes, we do some resolutions, but I wonder how many of us really have stopped to make a self-assessment, right? Like St. Augustine does or did on a daily basis, and left us with this beautiful recipe on how we can have a self-assessment on a daily basis. And so we started to think a lot about this, and we ran across this image right here, in which I wanted to throw at you guys just to kind of look at it for a second and consider whether we are living our life truly mindfully, or if we are living our life mindfully. And I know it's kind of tricky with the words that we are having here, but it has everything to do with what I believe the United States Spiritist Federation wished for us to do, and also to consider on whether we are living our lives hanging on to the past, cluttering our mind with the why did it have to happen? What if I had done this? I should have spoken a different way. I should have taken that job. What if I had chosen to marry this person, or what have you? Or if we're living too much in the future. I won't be able to cope. I won't be able to do this. I will never be able to create this, or to have that job, or to have that relationship. And so what we're going to find is this proposition, this suggestion that not only comes from this series of talk today with Spiritism, but also a lot of what we are seeing on social media, because mindfulness is a topic that is popping up here and there, whether we are on Instagram, whether we are on Facebook. We see even courses that are being given so that we can lead a life where we are in the here and now, quieting down that clutter of thoughts, that clutter of ideas that really takes over our minds, whether we are living in the past, whether we are living in the present, and consider the here and now. And so to open up, I wanted to begin with this phrase by Joanna de Angelis, in which she will state in the book Plenitude that we should choose our goals and our duties mindfully and pursue them only when proven legally and morally sound. And there is a reason for my madness to begin our discussion about this very impactful phrase that Joanna de Angelis brings us in telling us that we should pursue our goals, our duties, only when they have been proven legally and morally sound for our betterment, for our future life, because we also understand that when we seek something that has to do with our joy and our happiness, often people will consider the immediate pleasures. They won't consider looking at oneself, making the self-assessment as a spirit that is an immortal one, that there will be implications for a future life. A lot of times we live our lives as if this is it in the here and now. And that's not exactly what we are proposing when we throw this slide right here in which we should be living in the here and now. So the description for mindfulness is a full awareness of precisely what is happening in the present. So it is not about spending time considering the future too much, because according to scientific research, 80% of what we worry about doesn't even happen for our future. And mulling over what has happened in the past is not going to change anything. So when we look at this idea of living mindfully, we are going to find that living mindfully with mindfulness involves quietening down that chatter and focusing on what needs to be done right now. It is in concentrating on what is happening at the moment, without dwelling, without judging, without trying to change what has already happened. In other words, it's about not overthinking or overanalyzing. Who does that a lot? I'm going to raise my hand because I do. Or the opposite. It's not about banishing all thoughts either. And so when we were seeking for material to bring here today and trying to make an analogy between what researchers have found and make a correlation, a link with what Spiritism proposed, we also wanted to bring here that meditation and mindfulness is not the very same thing. A lot of people confuse this aspect about meditation and mindfulness, but unlike many forms of meditation, which actually involves clearing our mind, mindfulness means letting our thoughts come and go without rushing to figure out what they mean, right? So it's not a spiritist practice, but it is a spiritual one in which many people, even the psychotherapists in Spiritism, suggest that we do. When we talk about meditation, it actually also helps us in the mediumistic work that we have been trusted with and assigned at the Spiritist Center. But one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that we are not able to live mindfully all the time, right? I mean, this is a given. There is no way that we can do that. And what research will state is that mindfulness is at the same time a process and it is also an outcome. Let's think about this. We were at the website for Women's Health today. It's a website, of course, Women's Health, but only because I have an account that I read on all of the articles that they bring. And there was one on the outcome process of living mindfully. And this is what they say. They say that living mindfully actually allows us to have a process and also an outcome of building headstrong habits. And this is what they say. It says that when we dwell too much in the past, or when we are dwelling too much on the future, instead of living in the present, instead of taking into account what is happening in the here and now, they state that we actually activate our sympathetic nervous system, which is that driving force behind the body's fight or flight response. And if I'm mistaken here, I'm glad that Dr. Sonia is coming after me because she can correct me. And so they're going to say that when we kick into that continuous type of process in which we are in high gear, we are actually bombarding our body and our mind needlessly. We know that we are more than just a physical body. And so what the article is going to say is that in order to seek a healthy life, we know that we can't have a worry-free type of lifestyle because we are in a world of trials and expiations, or trials and atonements, depending on how you see the material that is proposed by Spiritism. We are transitioning to a world of regeneration. And of course, we are here because we still are the spirits that are deserving, or better yet, we are having an opportunity to rescue, to learn, to evolve, to progress ever more as the state of immortal spirit. But what they're going to say is that if we are able to dial down a little bit that constant state of being worried, that we are actually kicking in that gear of the fight or flight state that often we find ourselves in, we are able to flex. We are able to work out our parasympathetic nervous system, also known as the relaxation response, by being mindful. It's what they'll call the chill out effect that comes with significant brain bonuses for us. This is not to say with our teenagers, they say, chill out, mother, chill out, father. No, they're talking about accessing that which we have available, kicking into gear the parasympathetic nervous system so that we become relaxed, so that we become a little bit more chilled out before all of the vicissitudes and the issues that we face. People who practice, is that okay? I see you coming back,
Yes.
Marcia.
Yes, you have a couple more minutes.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. I'm so sorry.
Time flies. Time flies when we're having fun. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Andrea.
Okay, so I'm just going to cut everything that I was saying, and I'm just going to get to the main point. Joanna De Angelis is going to state to us that when we seek a goal to live mindfully, and pursue them only when it is proven legally moral and sound, she's going to talk about the aspect of free will. It is about choices. It is by using the tool of understanding how mindfulness works so that we can have a life that is full life. It's one of the latest books that she has. But we are not left to chance. We are given the manual in the Gospel according to Spiritism under chapter 17, which is called Be Perfect, in which the Spirit Lazar is going to allow us to understand the aspect of living a life seeking a goal or seeking our duties, where we are applying our moral obligation first towards ourselves and then immediately thereafter. So this is really important for us to understand, because we can only have this ability to seek that which is legally and morally sound when we practice mindfulness. And one of the ways that we can get there is also contained in the beautiful book, The Gospel According to Spiritism, when we are given the understanding of what entails a person who is fully aligned on living mindfully. And that one is the one also contained on chapter 17, the moral person. The moral person are those who practice the law of justice, love, and charity in the greatest purity. Well, how can I do that? I'm not yet perfect. Well, they're not saying that it's something that it's already done. It's in making an effort. We are aware. We are mindful of our present existence, of what our duties are, our responsibilities are. If we question our conscience, they say, about our actions, we ask if we have violated any laws, if we have broken any laws, if we have caused any pain. And then St. Augustine on question 919 of the Spirit's book is also going to give us this idea on the most effective means and ways of improving ourselves in this life, and for resisting the draw or the caution of evil. And I'm not sure if I have a slide here, but I'm going to put that in there so that Marcia, and I'm finalizing, I don't want to break the time here, they're going to give us the recipe. A sage in antiquity has told you, know thyself. We comprehend also the wisdom of the maxim, but the difficulty is precisely in knowing ourselves. By what means can we do that? Well, do what I used to do when I was living on the earth. At the end of each day, I examined my conscience. I reviewed what I had done and asked myself whether or not I had failed to fulfill some duty, and whether or not anyone might have had reason to complain about me. It was then that I was able to arrive at knowing myself and seeing what was there in me that needed to be reformed. That, in essence, in the summary, is living mindfully.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you for pivoting into speaking now and talking about mindfulness and chilling out. For all of you teenager out there, not me, you heard Andrea speaking, but she also gave us great examples of resources, right? Andrea, Joanna DeAngelis, the Spirit's book, Gospel According to Spiritism, among others. But let's go ahead and get started. Back to listening from Dr. Sonia Doi. And that's okay, Sonia. I know those things happen, right? It's the weakest link in
God.
everything.
Yeah, I do hope, I really apologize, and I do hope it's working now. So yes, it's working. So, and I think that it was meant for me to talk last, because all these wonderful talks that preceded me are really meaningful when we talk about compassion. So in the Gospel According to Spiritism, chapter 13, the Spirit Michel explains beautifully what compassion is. It's a long message, and I really highly recommend reading it all, but I have summarized it in 3 bullets. Compassion is the first of all virtues, he says, the sister of charity. Compassion is the empathy that unfolds into charity, and it goes beyond the material needs. By listening, giving support and consolation, restoring hope, stimulating courage. He goes on to say, compassion deeply felt is love. Love is devotion, and devotion is being selfless. And continues, selflessness toward unfortunates is the greatest virtue, which has been so well exemplified by our Master Jesus. It's serving with humility. And Peter Hayes talked so much about humility beautifully, so I don't have to go on that. And finally, the message says compassion is the virtue that brings you closer to the angels, that leads you to God. Because to practice compassion, it's necessary to rid ourselves from our imperfections, to seek the development of virtues. And that means we are working ourselves in our inner transformation. And by practicing compassion, we accelerate our route, our path into perfection, into purification. And of course, that brings us closer to the higher spirits, to God. But also, as we practice compassion over and over, every time we feel the good spirits around us, if we are really practicing compassion with humility, with all the good virtues that's necessary. The Spirit Joana de Angelis, through the mediumship of Divaldo Franco, in a book that I don't believe has been translated yet to English, brings another aspect of compassion and reminds us of the benefits to the person practicing compassion. So it's not just we being the doers, but we also receive. We also have the benefit. And she says the simple desire to assist others provides physical and mental well-being. Well, I will not be me if I don't bring at least one word of science here. And I would say that what Joana de Angelis states here has been demonstrated in several studies, scientific studies, showing that when we do charity, when we help others, when we come out of ourselves to help others, we actually have a change in the neurohormone profile. And that gives us a sense of reward, gives us a sense of well-being. And she says, by practicing compassion, we learn to subdue our moral flaws and imperfections, helps to clean our minds from negative emotions and sentiments. And that really is a powerful resource. And Joana keeps on saying, whether or not the assisted person values, recognizes, or even identifies the benefit of compassion is not important. The essential is experiencing the feeling of edification, the joy of accomplishment, even if small. And she says practicing compassion gives meaning to life. How many times we hear people saying that they are feeling empty, that they are looking for meaning, for purpose in life? Well, that's one resource, practice compassion. And Joana de Angelis also comes to remind us that we ourselves need compassion. We need to be compassionate about ourselves. And she says, expand compassion to your neighbor, to the world, and be compassionate to yourself. your limitations and shortcomings. So we are not perfect, as we have heard so many times today. And we are constantly being reminded that, yes, we have flaws, we have limitations, we have so many things that we have to improve. And we have to be compassionate to ourselves, because we are still in the path of perfection. And here are just some suggestions that we can do to work on self-compassion. We need to accept that we are not perfect, but we are in the journey to perfection. Reflect upon your sentiments and emotions. We need to identify the source of distress, the source of imperfection in ourselves, so that we can work towards it, and we can be forgiven to ourselves. We need to apologize if we have offended anyone, before this becomes guilt that solidifies in our hearts. And if there's guilt, there's any sentiment of guilt inside of us, we need to transform that sentiment into self-forgiveness. And above all, we need to love ourselves. If we don't work in our self-compassion, we cannot work on being compassionate to others. We need to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And is the Spirit Emmanuel, through Francisco Xavier, again in a book that I believe has not been translated to English, that leads us into reflecting on our own need for compassion. And he says, do not feel proud for helping others, because so very often you are the one in need of compassion. So let's ponder about that. And we should appreciate the compassion that we receive from others, our family members, our co-workers, people that we interact every day. When we are impatient, intolerant, arrogant, and they are compassionate to us. We need to appreciate the consistent support of benefactor spirits that are compassionate to us, even when we are ungrateful. We need to remember the friendship and comfort received when we ourselves are facing difficult times. And we need to appreciate the forgiveness of those who have hurt us. So, the Spirit Emmanuel recommends be compassionate, especially to those who have offended or harmed you. We know that it's much easier to be compassionate to people that are friends, people that we care about, people that we have we have love, that we love, and we have affection. But it's much more difficult to exercise compassion to the ones who have offended or harmed us. But this is the most valuable, the most meaningful kind of compassion. And Emmanuel ends by reminding us that we all, with no exception, need God's compassion. So we need to be compassionate to others so that God can be compassionate to us. And after we think about all this, after we reflect, we can do our self-assessment, asking how compassionate have I been to myself And how compassionate have I been to others? And then we can go to the second step, making our resolution, planning the strategy to improve self-compassion and to expand compassion to others. So that's part of our New Year's resolution. Thank you very much.
I love it. I love that we are doing a business plan and a strategy for 2023. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Doy, for your discussion on empathy and how we're the ones, right, who need forgiveness. We need to love ourselves the most. But anyways, we have some time to have some questions, and I would like for our team in the background to just pop the questions, and we go. So Alba, you're first. For everyone who may not have listened to Alba, or it's been several speakers ago, Alba was speaking about patience, and the question is, patience is all about building strength to have a long-term view of our reincarnations. Can you talk a bit about how to best build these important skills, Alba?
Sure, Marcia. Thank you. Thank you for the question. It made me think a lot. And by listening to the different presentations and the different virtues, definitely we need all of them to build a patient. One of them is mindfulness, right? We were talking about mindfulness. Andrea was talking about mindfulness. So living in the right here, in the right now, and breathing the present is going to help us to think that these too shall pass. So being in the present is going to help us to build patient. Also, meditation, any form of meditation is going to help us to be in touch with ourselves and with God, and it is giving us some strength for those moments in which we need to exercise patience. Breathing, just a simple exercise of breathing 3 times, it helps us to think before we lose our temper, right? Um, Andrea Luis also in the book No Solar, he recommends, it's not Andrea Luis, but he shows that he recommends to drink this water of silence. So every time we are about to lose our temper, or like we are in the edge, we can drink the water, or we can pretend we drink the water and keep it in our mouth until we have something good to say, or better, don't say anything. Uh, and actually volunteering, serving, right? That Claudio was mentioning before. So when we volunteer, we serve others, and we are putting ourselves in the shoes of others, is helping us, and being compassionate, as Sonia mentioned. So there are different activities that we need to do, but most important of all, let us practice and practice and practice so we can one day become fully patient and fully perfect.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Alba. Let's see what's next. We have a question for Peter. Hi, Peter. Peter, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, we're told that it is not possible to be charitable if we're not humble. I think you referenced that. Can you discuss what does that mean to us?
Thank you. I think what it means is it has to do with our intentions towards charity. In other words, if we're trying to be charitable, do we have an agenda? If our agenda is, I want everyone to admire how wonderful I am for being charitable, then my intentions are more attached to accolades and praise rather than doing charity for charity's sake. When we engage in charity for charity's sake, we're not keeping score, we're not thinking about the consequences down the road. We just are in the moment and we are helping others, and that's basically it. I mean, everybody likes to receive some kind of accolade or praise it sometimes, right? It makes us feel better. That's normal. But if we're attached to it, then it can get us into trouble. Buddhism often talks a lot about freeing ourselves of attachments, and one of those can be emotional attachment. And so once again, if I, for instance, am attached to needing validation from others every time I do something in the name of charity, then I've got a problem. So I need to work on freeing myself of the need to receive some kind of validation.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Let's see if we have another question. All right. This one goes for Claudio. Claudio, in your opinion, is altruism growing in our highly individualistic, competitive Western society? If so, what is contributing to that?
I thank you very much for the question. Yeah, it definitely is growing, and like I mentioned on the speech there, we are surrounded by an era of where information is available everywhere, and we tend to look more for negative news. And there's even a research that was done where they would put like positive news and negative news, and then most people were drawn to the negative news, right? So we live in an era where news can flow everywhere, every time. So we tend to see only the negativity and the worst part of it. But if you look at the numbers and trends and things like how many children are dying per year compared to maybe 30, 40 years ago, and then there are so many different aspects of that really show how humanity in general is progressing towards a more elevated society. It's just there. Yeah, you just need to look for that data because it's not easy to find. But overall, the society is growing to become a more evolved society, and part of that is the altruism part. I do think people are getting more altruistic. My wife is a teacher, and she teaches high school, and she tells me some wonderful things that those kids do that back in my day when I was in high school it was completely different. So I do see a lot of good in the new generations. And if we look for the positive data and the positive growth, we'll find it.
Awesome. Thank you, Claudio. It's awesome, right? Data is available, so we can always research how we're getting better. But let's not forget, according to the law of progress, right? There is no going back. We are getting better. So good stuff. Let's see what we have next. Ligia, this question is for you. And the audience said that it was amazing discussion on resiliency and the learned helplessness theory, right? How can Spiritism help us better understand our feelings of power, resilience, and optimism while we face challenges in our lives?
Yes, I think one of the first things is realizing that something that is difficult is not necessarily bad. I think that especially in our culture, we have become so accustomed to the comforts of modern world and accessing technology and science that sometimes we correlate challenges with being something negative. So first having that change in perception, and that's the optimism part, knowing that sometimes we have to work for certain things, that things are not just easy and easygoing. And I think the other point about power and resilience is better understanding spiritism, like I mentioned when we talk about the law of cause and effect. Situations will happen whether we want to or not. I mean, that part is part of the evolutionary process. We're still evolving as spirits. Many lectures mention how we are not perfect. We are in the process of evolution to reach perfection. So we have to go through trials and challenges and obstacles. So we are going to have to face them. It is all about how we face them. And that's where the power is. If you face in a positive manner, you will overcome it easily. If you don't, it's going to be more difficult. But we all have freedom. We have free will to choose. And I think understanding that part is God allows us the time. He has patience, like we talked today. He has patience and he has lots of compassion for us. So if he presents us a challenge and we don't overcome it, we don't use our resilience, we don't grow from it, he will give us another opportunity and another opportunity and another opportunity. It's up to us on how quickly do we want to move on to the next step. So it's really changing that perspective and understanding that obstacles, challenges, even suffering, they're all for our betterment. And once we are able to understand what is a message, what is the learning behind each situation, we will move on from it. He doesn't want us to be suffering. He doesn't want us to be in pain. He wants us to grow. So the fighting against it and trying to go against the current, but being active and really looking for a better way out and a lesson behind the challenge, the more quickly we will be able to overcome and find the spot of, mindfulness, not mindful, and all the other beautiful things we learned today. It's about perspective and realizing you may not choose what comes your way, those you chose way back from your choices, but you can definitely make a change going forward. I don't think anybody can read up there, but it's a phrase from Francisco Cândido Xavier, Xavier, and he said, "You cannot go back and make a new beginning, but you can start over today and make a better ending." And I think that's the perspective. We don't need to go back. We cannot go back, but we definitely can change it today to make a better future. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Ligia. Let's see, next question. Andrea. So we could imagine that our spirituality is how we experience mindfulness. I think you may have mentioned that, Andrea. What are some spiritist resources for us to become more mindful? Yes.
Okay, there we go. Well, one of the things that we notice with technology, with how easy things are for us today, is the ability to multitask, right? So we are always on the go. We are, cooking dinner for our kids. We are at the same time on Instagram seeing our posts. We're looking at Facebook at the same time. I have mask on my face to make sure that I erase all the wrinkles. And then at the same time, I'm answering emails, and I also have my work on the other computer. So I am constantly on the go. I'm constantly multitasking. So one of the things that I would suggest is stopping and taking advantage of the Spiritist literature. We are not here on a time of transition just by chance in having this beautiful body of knowledge available to us just by chance. It is exactly what we need to seek the content that is needed so that we can start not only evolving and progressing, but also developing this state of mind in which we are not cluttered by that which is not significant, by that which is not going to offer us the necessary tools to evolve. Which is not to say that we shouldn't be using technology, that we shouldn't be using face masks. That's not what we're saying. We are saying that we need to stop and take advantage of the time to allow ourselves, if mindfulness is at the same time a process and an outcome, we need to get there. And I will suggest some reading material, otherwise I wouldn't be here, and I will, hopefully not passing the time again. But we did use the book Plenitude by Joana de Angelis, psychographed by the medium Divaldo Pereira Franco, as well as Life Challenges and Solutions. But one of the books that we need to really take advantage of, and it is not an easy reading, it is constant study material, is The Gospel According to Spiritism and the Spirit's Book. It is also not by chance that the Spiritist body of knowledge opened up with a book based on questions and answers. And as we evolve, as we become more mindful, we realize that a lot of what we read when we were first introduced to Spiritism is not seen the same way as we do today. Because our mind has grown. We are able to see things a lot more clearly. The landscape around us has changed. And so this is the proposition, is to take advantage of these beautiful resources that we have In the Spiritist literature today, many of the books available in different languages, and I'm not just going to say Portuguese or English, in Spanish, in German, even in Greek, so that it makes it easier for us to have a safe manual, a safe guide for which to follow as we continue on our journey towards spiritual growth and spiritual perfection.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. I love what you said. And let's see if we have another question. I believe we may have time just for one more. This is now for Dr. Doi. I believe Joanna De Angelis was teaching us that compassion can lessen the burden of our imperfections. Can you explain, Dr. Doi, why is it so important to practice self-compassion? I believe you may be on mute.
Okay. Thank you, Marcia, for the question. And please call me Sonia. You keep calling me Dr. Doi. Yeah, we have so many imperfections. And, you know, if we lack patience, if we're intolerant, if we have pride, all that, we may be hurting people. And that starts being registered in our consciousness. Sometimes we are not even aware of that. But the time when we start thinking of the moral teachings of Jesus, we become aware that, oh, we have done so many things wrong. And that starts burning into our consciousness. And the only way to get rid of that uncomfort, of that burden, is to first make a good assessment of ourselves, is to go deep into ourselves, is to examine our consciousness, and then little by little start to work on self-compassion, on self-forgiveness. And then we can, as Ligia said, we can start again. We cannot repair what we did before. Yes, we can repair, but in a different way. We cannot go back and make, but we can start again. We can improve ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Alba, Andrea, Claudia, Ligia, Peter, and Sonia. Thanks, everyone who watched today's Talk Live. And those who have been following us, we meet weekly, as I mentioned before, and this is part of our Spiritist Talk series. Next Saturday, December 17th at 11 a.m. Eastern. Don't miss our next live with Márcio Lázaro, and he will be speaking Jesus and Spiritism. But I would like to ask one more favor. Peter, would you be so kind to give us a prayer, and we'll close after that.
Okay. Let us close our eyes if we can. We thank you, dear God, for all the gifts that we receive from you. We thank you for life. We thank you for the capacity to have hope, for the ability to change, for the ability to learn, for the ability to love, the ability to practice all of the attributes discussed today. May all of us do our best to be able to deepen our experience in life by learning each and every day, appreciating the journeys we are on, and doing our best to be in harmony with one another and with ourselves. May all of us move through the next year with a renewed sense of resolution and an effort to not only look inward, but to spread the light outward. We thank you, Master Jesus, for your guidance and your support, and may all of us be an instrument of peace, progress and prosperity for one another. Amen.